Hey everybody, Anthony Dodge Maltrain Outsider, the American Outsider, here with Matt Clarke Series 3 kickoff video. Now, if you've come into the video, it's because you probably do have some interest in Matt Clarke, because otherwise you would have tuned out. So I want to do a few things in this video, and I have no idea how long it's going to be, but fairly long. The first thing I want to do is explain why I am sort of excited and where I'm at and why I feel the need to talk about Matt Clarke outside of doing the series. Matt Clarke is very, very special to me because of all the things I've done in my life creatively. I've always had a wall. I always saw myself as a creative writer and even got a book published, but financially it bombed. Critically, it seemed to do okay, but it bombed. And that kind of put slammed a door shut on my dreams of being a successful writer, one of the little pipe dreams I had growing up. On the flip side is comedy, and I always personally repressed the comedy in any professional vein because trying to be a serious writer, I figured if I tried to do comedy, people would never respect the serious writer aspect I was pushing. And so I always kind of kept my comedy to in my job, friends and family, stuff like that. And long story short, my channel started in comedy. Comedy is what I use to get myself in front of a group or in front of a camera. Um, and my favorite things I've done on my channel have been comedy. They're also the least watched stuff I've done. Um, there's no shock that the my most watched videos are my Miracle Outsider, the only serious stuff I ever did on this channel, and every episode went over 1,000 views, which, considering when I was doing that show, I only had 3, 4 to 500 uh, subscribers at the time, and most of them went 2,000 or more, and a couple of them went 4,000, and one of them went 9,000, which was impressive at the time. So, if I had stayed doing serious modeling, this channel would have grown. But this channel has become a vehicle for me. It's allowed me to just be me. I'm not trying to please anybody but myself, and I've got a group of people that seem to appreciate that and have come along. And Matt Clarke is the most cathartic part of all that, because in writing Matt Clarke, it was the first time in my life where my creative writing side and my desire for comedy welded together with no holds barred, let it all go, and just me not trying to repress one side or the other, and to do it for an extended period of time. I've done comedy bits. In high school, I used to write little comedy bits and things, but Matt Clarke Series 1 was a 5 month exercise. And the other ones had their own bits to it. So that's why Matt Clarke is important to me personally, is because it was the first time these two yin and yang parts of my soul joined forces and just went at it without getting in each other's way. And it was writing, especially Series 1, was one of the most fun things I've ever done in that sort of vein. It was absolutely amazing to write it. The fun I had scripting the jokes, writing it up, sharing it with Joyce and friends and my kids, getting their reactions, both the really good laughing reactions and the, oh, Dad, come on. And because those reactions are also valued. But so that's why, and that's why I talk about it and have done videos about Matt Clarke, and I talk about it in my series. It is special to me, and if you didn't understand that, maybe now you do. Now, the second thing I want to do is if you're new to this channel, now you know that Matt Clarke is important to me. There's a couple of things I would like to share with you and tell you a little bit about it. Not the history of it. I've got videos that tell you the history of how we created Matt Clarke. I've talked about it in the live streams at times. But um, if you've never looked at my Matt Clarke cartoon or comic, we call it a vocalized comic, and I'll explain that in a second. Um, it's here, and it's one of the most creative things I've done, as I just got done mentioning. But I try to keep everything on this channel train related. So we have Matt Clarke, Railroad Marshal, as the series now called. In series one, it was called Matt Clarke, Railroad Detective, and it got its name that we kind of stole off an old late 1950s, early 1960s CBS TV show called Tales of the Century, featuring Matt Clarke, Railroad Detective. And Matt Clarke was a railroad detective, a cowboy who rode the trains. And basically, he would tell stories of Old West villains and heroes and their interactions, and occasionally he was involved. But basically, he just kind of was there to tell the story, and then other people acted out the stories. Otherwise, what Matt Clarke is it's a bit of a parody of all those 1940s, 50s, and 60s cinema serials that you would have had in the UK and the United States, where you went to the movies, and even as a kid, you would have the cartoon, and then you would have a serial. You would have the next episode. I mean, Batman and Robin was one back in the 50s. And then there were all the space ones and science fiction ones, Undersea Kingdom, Rocky Jones and the Space Cadets. And it's just parodying those to a degree, but not trying to make a parody of the entire genre. It's just that's the basic idea, which becomes a vehicle to let me just let my more adult humor fly out, because Matt Clarke is an FSW, not suitable for work, not suitable for school. This is not something you want to share unless your boss also has a very bawdy sense of humor. But it isn't just a bunch of dirty jokes. It's a crap load of dirty jokes. But hidden inside the dirty jokes are all kinds of jokes, from highbrow, very cerebral jokes to the most guttural jokes, and everything in between. There are pop culture references that are both anachronistic, they're out of time for that period. There are fourth wall breaks where the characters, basically admit that they're characters in a show. There's every type of zany, madcap, cerebral, dark, twisted, naughty humor that I love. Every aspect of it is from a vein of humor I love. The bad puns, the dad jokes, running gags, fourth wall breaks, as I mentioned. Now, so Matt Clarke is set in a town called Big Gulch, a fictional town, it never existed, in a fictional territory called the Western Territories, and this is Big Gulch County with the town of Big Gulch. And it's populated by everybody's crazy. There's only one character in there that isn't, um, and even that's kind of hard to say, but the main villain, Matt Clarke, is the one straight man. But what makes something like this work is that every character is unaware that they are crazy, mad, insane, off the wall. They all interact in a world where what we are laughing at is daily, normal, natural life, which makes it, the absurd is not absurd to them. And to keep it train related, because this is a model train channel and he is railroad detective, each of the stories somehow involves trains in the plot. So I'll do a quick synopsis of each of those. But the thing is, if you're new to the channel and never watched Matt Clarke, or you went and watched something from series 2 and you go, you It is a serial. You have to watch it in series. And there are two full series already out and two Christmas specials. And you really have to watch them in that order. You have to watch series one, then the Christmas special one, series two, and then the second Christmas special. Now, there are a couple of other things I popped up that are Big Gulch related that don't officially fit into the Big Gulch world. For example, I did a late night K-Tel record parody, where the guys used to come in the 70s and get 50 of the top 100 hits, where it's about one of the characters named Rusty Twanger, who is the cowpoke crooner. But again, I could spend hours just going through all the characters. So this whole series is done as a vocalized comic book or comic strip. Episodes are anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes long. And basically, you have a series of a backdrop, a background scene, and then when a character's speaking, they appear in front of the background, and then the next character appears. And sometimes when everybody's talking at once, I throw everybody on. It's done with the most low budget, cheapest graphic abilities, because that's all I know. It's basically pictures that are green screened on top of each other. And actually in series one, I wasn't even green screening. I just threw the background picture in, modified the colors so the character stood out a bit, and then the characters were cut out images from stuff I found on Google Images and Pinterest and so forth, where I thought I could take them for free. We tried not to use licensed images except for the original Matt Clarke, and we used that without a license, and that's the actual actor in his Matt Clarke gear. That's Jim Davis, who played Mr. Ewing, the patriarch of the Ewing family, in the 1970s American drama Dallas. But be that as it may, so it's very low budget with minimal animation. In most scenes, there's no animation. It's just the character pops up and the voice. And then I do almost all the voices. My wife, Joyce, does most of the female characters. There's a couple of female characters where even I do their voices. I do Madame Donna-Lot. That's not Joyce. Some people, it's a woman, and they hear that high-pitched voice, and they think that's Joyce doing it. No, that's me doing Donna-Lot. And over the course of counting Series 3, we have over 70 different characters, and I have to have each of their voices on register. So I have a notebook where I have the character's name and clues on where to get the voice. And even sometimes the clues don't help me, and I have to go back and listen to an episode of them and listen to it a few times and then remember how I did their voice. Okay, so that's what it is. But you really need to watch Series 1 through on before you get into Series 3, because everything leads into the next episode. All right, so Series 1 involves Matt Clarke and his friends dealing with a rabid psychopathic train robber named Bobby the Kid and his gang. And his gang features a bunch of oddball characters. There's Five Finger Bill, who becomes Four Finger Bill at the end of Series 1. There's Five Finger Bill. There's Daisy Cockett, who is hired to seduce the mayor of Big Gulch. But there's a storyline there. And basically, Bobby got caught by Matt Clarke and wants revenge. He's broken out of prison and he wants revenge on Matt Clarke. And so he's after Matt Clarke, and also the mayor, who is also the judge, who sent him to prison for trying to rob a train, and the sheriff of Big Gulch, who was part of the posse out to get him. He's after revenge, and he wants them all dead. And on top of that, he wants to rob the one train he never robbed, the most famous train in the Old West, the Black Mamba, because Sheriff Clarke prevented him from robbing it when he caught him. So that's the plot to Series 1. And through a lot of zany adventures, Matt Clarke succeeds, and Bobby the Kid walks away. Now, a character in the gang, In fact, 2 characters from Bobby's gang. Most of Bobby's gang get killed, but 2 survive. One is Four Finger Bill, or Five Finger Bill, who at the end changes his name to Four Finger Bill because he loses a finger to Matt Clarke. He escapes because by the time I finished writing series 1, I was fully planning on a series 2. And I just wanted to leave some open ends to the plot that I could potentially farm when I started series 2. And then Daisy Cockett, who had seduced the mayor, she gets caught. Four Finger Bill escapes. Daisy Cockett gets caught. And there is a very, very wild relationship between Daisy Cockett and the mayor. A lot of sexual tension jokes and that. Because in series 1, her goal was to seduce the mayor to get him on the train so Bobby could kill him. But, long story short, while she successfully seduced the mayor, it kind of starts to come out towards the end that she seduced herself and actually likes the mayor. And that becomes a fun point in series 2. Because the mayor did fall for her and is totally enamored of her. And then at the end, he finds out she was just playing him along. And now she's like, I really did like you. And he's a liar, but he still actually does like her. And that's a game we play in series 2. Now, series 1 ran from January 14th of 2021. I started writing it in December of 2020. It ran from January, 18 episodes toward the end of May. And it was a blast. I had fun, and a lot of people on this channel enjoyed it. I really loved it. And by the end of series 1, we knew, we being Joyce as well, knew there'd be a series 2. But when it was done, I had spent 5 months working on it. I had never spent that much time on one creative project like that, where it was just so consuming when I wasn't working and everything else. And, just writing it, editing it, doing the voices, then putting the episode videos together and editing those, which sometimes led to rewrites and redoing some voices. And it was a 5-month thing. And when it was done, I just needed a mental break. I was done with Big Gulch. I had written the story out. I finished the story. And I didn't want to think about a sequel right away. People were even saying on the last couple episodes, I can't wait for series 2. I can't wait for series 2. Like, well, you're going to have to. And I already kind of decided that, what? I should have plenty of time to come up with a new plot. I'm just going to make this a yearly January to May event. And I then took June, July, and August off. And then beginning of September, I began thinking about Matt Clarke again and coming up with a bit of a plot. And I came up with a basic plot, including the concept that there is a master criminal behind it all. And that was the character Stanley Steamhair, who is revealed to be a railroad tycoon. And we find out in series 2 that he's behind everything that's happened for years up to series 1, as well as the events of series 1. And he's sort of my number one of Spectre. He's that Ernst Stavro Blofeld. He's the mastermind criminal, even though he's a railroad tycoon and real estate mogul and all that. So I came up with that idea. And the original master villain for series 2 was going to be the character Reverend Saltine, who plays a big role in series 2, but was not the main villain. Now, I mentioned this main villain, Stanley Steamhair, but he was going to be the master villain behind it all, and I came up with a plot not only for series 2, but for series 3. And so Stanley Steamhair wasn't going to be dealt with until series 3. We just learn in series 2 he's been behind everything. So that's a bit of a spoiler alert, but we're not trying to be a mystery here. Anyhow, I came up with that plot, and I started writing out, because the way I go is I come up with some jokes, And then I start trying to build a plot around the jokes and decide where do I want to go. And I need a villain for that. And as I started writing out and scripting a basic plot line and coming up with some jokes, I had plenty of jokes. I mean, it's easy to make fun of certain things. And so Reverend Saltine came in. And the funny thing is, Reverend Saltine is actually based on some stuff I wrote in high school. I had a notebook. I went to a Jesuit high school, very religious school. I wasn't religious. I was very anti-religious. If that offends you, I'm sorry. But I was 16 in high school and rebelling against the religion being crammed down my throat all around. And not to mention my mom was a Southern Baptist who had a lot of thou shalts with her. And so I was very much antagonistical, but I was also very quiet and subversive. But I wrote this series of, I created a religion called Presbyterianism in high school. And so there was a prophet Freebius and a god named Whammo and all that. And so I went back to these notebooks and just brought the character Freebius and all this and created Reverend Saltine around him. And so he was the main heavy for Series 2 originally. But as I started scripting it, I said, there's not enough meat here to really make a big dramatic run. So then, especially I'd already conceived of a plot for Series 3, which was Stanley Steemher wants the Indian land so that he can run his trains through it. And then I came up with this idea of opium. Oh, Reverend Saltine's an opium dealer. But the way I was writing Reverend Saltine, he just didn't have it to be a master criminal. And then November came in, and I'm writing, and I've got some basic scripts, and I'm actually working on some of the bits of Series 3 as well, because I'm working on Series 2 and Series 3. And as November came in, I came up with the opium plan, and I created the supplier, the Kahat Stevens. And as I started writing the Kahat Stevens, I said, wait a minute, here's the guy that's got the potential background to be a real master player and a master criminal. This is my next Bobby the Kid. But out of the blue, in early November, the Christmas commercials and advertisements started coming in, and I did not write down what prompted it, and normally I do, but I was watching something, and all of a sudden I just got in my head, I did it was somebody advertising like, one of those Hallmark movies or something like that, Christmas in Wyoming, Christmas in Wyoming, or a frontier Christmas or something like that. And I just immediately made a joke, some kind of a joke that was Matt Clarke related. And Joyce laughed. It was like, you going to do a Matt Clarke Christmas special? Well, I wasn't planning it, but it prompted me to try to do a Matt Clarke Christmas commercial. It was just going to be a parody of those commercials. So I sat down and came up, how would a commercial work for a Matt Clarke Christmas? And the problem is my brain's like, well, you got to have a plot so that you can kind of suggest the plot in the commercial. And in a weekend, I wrote the Matt Clarke Christmas special. So the Christmas special was totally unplanned. And the one way you can tell at what stage the Christmas special came in is that to fit it in with the Matt Clarke world, I was going to reference things from Series 1, but also wanted to suggest things that were coming in Series 2. And the villain, or I shouldn't say the villains in the Christmas plot had nothing to do with Series 1 or Series 2, but the seeds planted were about Reverend Saltine. Smokey, who kind of is a very precocious, obnoxious kid based on all those serials I was talking about earlier. But Smokey has a little bit of a sea change at the very end of Series 1. Now, I could have just left any as is, but I decided to go with that. And so that became that's the intro to Series 2, is Smokey is not the same Smokey he was through most of Series 1. But he definitely aligns with the Smokey at the end of Series 1. And then, okay, I, just in the plot line, I needed Smokey to be kind of blue to fit all these other things fitting in around Smokey in the storyline. He became sort of a hidden centerpiece to the Christmas special. The Christmas special is really the elves, which is one of my funniest things. But as I was writing it, I wanted to drop seeds, plant foreshadowing for series two, but it's all about Smokey's obsession with Reverend Saltine. And so, as I wrote the Christmas special, still Reverend Saltine was the main villain to be. I had not committed. And then I did the Christmas special, and as I was writing the Christmas special, I came up with a whole new idea, and I decided the Kahat was the master villain. And originally, the Kahat and Saltine were working together. So it started as Saltine was the main villain, and the Kahat was going to be a supplier. But then I realized the Kahat had sort of the background to be a bigger player and make a better plot line, because I was just struggling coming up with even 8 episodes with the Reverend Saltine. There was just only so much you could do with him as the heavy. Um, at least I was struggling with that. I mean, I had plenty to go with him. But then I came up with the Kahat, and I just kept expanding the Kahat and the storyline with the Kahat. And then I just switched over. Well, the Kahat's the heavy. And originally it was now the Kahat was using the Reverend Saltine. And I just kept going through these metamorphoses. And then out of the blue, I wasn't even thinking about it. I wrote these 3 scenes. So I literally was writing 3 different versions of Series 2. Plus I had written Series 3. Well, what happened is, as I was writing this Kahat expansion, I just started writing about how he was working for um, Stanley Steamer. And that brought in the whole, you're going to start my war between the U.S. government and the Indians so I can get that land. And I started writing that in the play. And all of a sudden, I have 3 major plot lines, and I'm already making some scenes and getting ready to produce. And it's December, and I want to start Matt Clarke in January again, 1 year later. And I like, wait a minute, I'm stealing series 3, but I've got so much to write and it's pulling things in. And what I did was, I literally just, if you watch series 2, the Saltine is kind of the heavy beginning, and then we slowly bring in the Kahat. Because I'm still trying to discover who the Kahat is himself. As you discover it, that's me discovering him. And then I decided that the angle with him and Saltine working together wasn't there. So I kind of, as I'm developing the Kahat more and more, I did go back and rewrite some scenes to show the Kahat is going to start a war. So basically I took series 3 and put it into series 2. And that's a big deal later. But in the end, the Kahat's trying to start a war because Stanley Steamer wants to war. And the Kahat is just trying to come into the U.S. and use Stanley Steamer to help distribute his opium, and Stanley Steamer wants to use the Kahat to get his way, and both are planning on stabbing the other guy in the back, and Matt Clarke's got to do all this while dealing with Smokey, dealing with Reverend Saltine. So it became a very convoluted plot, but I did, in my opinion, an excellent job of winding these together. But you will notice that about halfway through the series, I threw Saltine out. I just came up with a quick, here's how we get rid of him, so I could focus on the main Kahat storyline. But it still went from what would have been a 15, 16 episode series to 23 episodes. And it was massive. It was heavy. It was involved. Plus, I was trying to do more graphic things, more animated things in the storyline. And in the end, the Kahat proved to be the best disposable. He gets killed. Stanley Steamer's still in the background trying to manipulate everything. And so it appeased everything I needed done. And when the series is over, by the way, Joyce and I, the whole time that series is running, we're planning a trip to the UK in 2022. And so that was a big thing in our life. So when series 3 ended at the end of May, right before, I think the last episode was 2 days before we got on the plane and went to the UK, and I wanted it done, I was really, really burned out with Matt Clarke, even though I clearly left the scene saying there will be a series 3. And was already working on a plot to replace the plot I had just used. So that leads to series 3 with one exception. As we were going in to write series, as I began in the fall to start writing series 3, a lot of tragedies happened. Several friends died. Joyce's brother died. Friends of the family, relatives of other members of the family, for example, Joyce's sisters-in-law, were all diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I mean, it was just an epidemic of tragedy between August and into the spring of this year. So when it was time to start thinking about series 3, we just weren't in a good mental place to really think about it. And I struggled because, well, I had just used the plot for series 3 in series 2. Oh, now what am I going to do? And so I tried September and October to come up with a plot. I had a couple of ideas. And then November came in, and people online were asking me, hey, is there going to be another Christmas special? I said, no, I'm not really thinking of it, because I didn't want to do a second Christmas special, because arrogantly I thought my first Christmas special was too perfect. I can't top it. There's no way I can do a better Christmas special that was too perfect. I mean, in my opinion, for my ability and everything, it was, and it's still one of the favorite episodes, is that 1 hour Christmas special from series at Christmas after series 1, Christmas of 2021. And so I was already struggling trying to write series 3, come up with even a plot line for series 3, other than I knew Stanley Steamer, as you saw at the end of series 2, if you saw it, he's hired Four Finger Bill to kill Matt Clarke because his big plans are still to come, and Matt Clarke keeps foiling him. So I had that much, and I still wanted to, okay, he still wants the land, so that still gave me some stuff to work on. And I was just trying to sketch outlines of what could happen, who was going to happen, but obviously Bill. And the original incarnation of series 3 was basically Bill was going to do an Inspector Clouseau bit, except the villain is the Clouseau this time, where there's all these bumbling attempts to kill Matt Clarke. That was the original idea for, well, not the original, but the original new idea for series 3 after I used the actual plot in series 2, was it was just going to be a series of failed attempts to kill. And that gave me enough to work on, and I sketched out an outline and was feeling decent about it among all the tragedies going on in our personal lives. And then out of the blue, people on my live streams through November were saying, is there going to be a Christmas Matt Clarke again? And I was saying, no, I don't know. And then in my classroom, I was a teacher. I was in my last year of teaching. I was about to retire. It was Christmas time, and I always showed these videos about Christmas in Germany because I was teaching German, and Christmas in Europe and Christmas in Germany, to go into the, before the holiday break, the exams, and then the week before Christmas. So I had a couple of weeks there. And one of the videos talked about the German Christmas character, the Krampus. And long story short, in this case, a germ built in, and originally it was going to be the demon, the Krampus, but I came up with this crazy plot, and then I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll make it Reverend Saltine, and I tied it in to series 2 to make it look like it was connected with series 2, and try to drop some very vague Easter eggs about what was coming in series 3. And just to tell you, one of the weird things about the Christmas special 2022 is, although on the surface it's still the zany comedy, the bad puns, the sexual tension humor, and all sorts of that, and hopefully people enjoyed it, the very mild, or maybe not so mild, parody, the Scooby-Doo bit in there, it was not as well cohesively put together as series one. It was more disjointed, and the plot was not as um, pure. You know, some of it was forced just to finish it up and have something I could put together for a Christmas special. But still, I think it works. But if you want to really understand our mindset, that despite this comedy, this outrageous, silly, zany comedy, if you look at the basic plot, it's involving this medieval monster, the Krampus, that was a cruel torturer of children, who went around with St. Nicholas on December 6th and punished the naughty children. And punished them by either giving them coal or rocks and sticks, to actually beating them if they were, if they were naughty children, to beat them. He's not a funny character. He is evil. So already there's that. But then the plot line, if you cut away the comedy and go to the basic plot line, the Reverend Saltine in the mask, in the guise of the Krampus, sees himself as the devil, and his job is to burn Big Gulch and everybody in it. That's a very, very dark, evil, twisted plot. That is mass murder, and we turned it into a comedy, and nobody got killed. But that's kind of suggestive of where our heads were, that where my head was at, was to have such a very dark, dark thing. But the problem is, I still was struggling with it. So the Christmas special for 2022 goes out, and people are like, hey, when does series one start? I said, well, I've got some basic ideas and a couple of scenes kind of written, but I'm struggling. And because this is already a near 40-minute video, I'll just go a little further and just say it kept being that way. I had a writer's block. I could not get through it. I would get a scene written and then maybe part of a next one, and then just go, I'm not quite sure this is where I want to go. I was struggling. And this was February. And again, people are asking in my live streams and on Facebook, are you working on Matt Clarke? Are we going to see it Matt Clarke Series 3? You clearly suggested it. And, and January came and no Matt Clarke. And I'm telling people, sorry, guys, it's going to be delayed. And I just kept trying to push it back 2 weeks. I figured if I could come up with a few scenes, I could start it, and then I'd be able to flow. Well, I kept delaying it. I would write some scenes and then just get into a block, and it wasn't working and things weren't lining up. And by that time, I had a general plot, which I don't want to share here. I want it to come as a surprise, but it does involve Stanley Steamher wants to Indian lands. But how we was going to do it had been a problem, where we were going to go with it. And then once I came up with the general idea, so by the middle of January, I had an active A-Z, beginning point, end point, and these are certain things that will be crossed as we go along. I had a general outline, and I had the first 2.5 scenes written, and then I had parts of other scenes written, but it just wasn't feeling cohesive. And some of the stuff I was writing said, oh, I better go back and add a lot more to this scene, and I just wasn't quite feeling the straight path like I did with series 1, and even with series 2. Even though I pulled things together, I saw the path and pulled them together. So finally, at March, in one of my live streams, a couple of guys said, are you going to do a series 3? And I said, I am working on it. I seriously am working on it. I'm having problems. There's a couple of major roadblocks that I can't get through in the plot, or where I want to go with the plot. I'm just not feeling something here. And about 3 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago now, as I had done many times, one evening, I just sat down with Joyce because I was really upset, really depressed, because it's, literally the conversation went, it's March and I have not worked on Matt Clarke in 2 weeks because I just could not do what I wanted to do. I've got 3 scenes written and parts of 3 or 4 more with ideas sketched out for a couple others, and they're just not lining up. And Joyce did what Joyce does. She starts, okay, tell me where you're going. Where are you stuck at? And, I try to explain it. She's just, well, maybe if you threw that out. I was like, no, I can't throw that out. That's a major part of the plot there. Okay, well, what about if you had this happen? No, because she knows I'm going to say no. And we didn't get anywhere. And we went to bed kind of early and laid down in bed and started watching Matt Clarke. We wound up watching some episodes from series 2. It was just because I'll watch Matt Clarke to get inspiration for Matt Clarke. And we're watching that video, and it happened to go to scene, I think it's scene 8 from series 2, which is where the Kahat gives his backstory. Now, Joyce loves that scene. I think she's the only person besides me who loves that scene. Most people, it probably got the fewest thumbs up, fewest comments, because it was a long narrative. It was the Kahat basically taking 20 minutes to explain his past. And then, 15 minutes to explain his past and 5 minutes to set up the rest of the story. But I love it. And Joyce starts giggling at bits like, I love that bit. The bit where he talks about how he kills his grandfather, And then I'm doing the wrong voice. And then my grandfather fell to his death. He fell to his death after I pushed him. You killed your grandfather? I didn't kill my grandfather. The stop at the end of his fall killed my grandfather. It's an old joke, but it worked there and it was cute. And the Kahat as James Mason was working for me. But she just loves that scene. She loves all the puns and the two killing bits. He talks about the story and how his father and mother met. And go watch the scene. It's one you don't necessarily have to have the background because he's given his background in it. If you want to understand the Kahat, the villain from Series 2, that's the scene to watch and just get all the jokes if you can. Anyhow, she starts laughing. She starts talking about stuff. And it's really cool when we do this. So we do that. And she made a couple of suggestions where I was like, I don't know. I'm just having this problem here and I can't get past. I've got these characters here, but she said a couple of things, and I can't even tell you exactly what she said, where at first I said no, and then turned off the TV. She rolls over, goes to sleep, and I'm just sitting there on my pillow. And then all of a sudden I said, what if, where Joyce was saying earlier, throw that part out, if not throw that part out, how about I throw this part out, and if I do this, and I went, oh, there's an idea. And I got up, I went downstairs, and what had been scene 2 was moved, and I wrote a new scene 2. And scene 1 had been written in October. The scene 1 you're going to see on Saturday, I wrote that in October. That was good to go, and then I was sketching other things out. Although I did go back and rewrite part of scene 1 when I found the modus operandi, what specifically was going to be the catalyst for Stanley Steamer's final move. So I did go back and add some things to scene 1, but basically in general it was there, other than exactly what was going to be used. Okay, so series 3 suddenly starts to come to life because I stay up that night and I start writing and fixing things and throwing some things out. Not the things Joyce suggested throwing out, but at the same time throwing things out because that idea had not occurred to me, because I felt like each thing had to be done. Well, maybe I can't do it that way. I know where I want to go. I had the ending written. That's the other thing. The ending's been written except for 2 little parts of it that I still have not decided. I'm going to see how I feel and then decide. It involves certain characters and whether they're going to die or not. But anyhow, so I stayed up that night and wrote 6 scenes, and I wrote 2 more the next day and rearranged a bunch of stuff. And Joyce came down, and I'm waking up, and I stayed in my chair and fell asleep in the living room. Joyce comes down, she goes, how are you? And I go, I'm great. She goes, really? I said, yeah, I've got 8 scenes done. And she's like, what? Yeah, I've written 8 scenes, and I've already scripted out the rest of the plot. I know pretty much where we're going to go. There's just a few things. And over that week, which was a week and a half ago, I started writing more scenes and wrote a couple of scenes, which then also added a joke, and we went back and through where I had to rewrite parts of previous scenes, but they're just small rewrites to help explain that joke, set that joke up. So I go back into scene 3 and say, oh, I need to add this, so when we do this in scene 6, it all feels set up. But now I've got 13 and a half scenes written. This will probably be a 16, 17 scene episode. I might stretch it to 18 just to match series 1. But I could end it in 2 scenes if I wanted to. But there's still some jokes and things I want to discover. But I've got, as I'm sitting here now, 3 scenes are filmed, voiced, and scheduled on YouTube. We're going to do some voices for scenes 4, 5, and 6, and I'm still trying to just work out exactly where to go to the end, because depending on what I decide to do with some characters at the end of the show depends on what I'm going to write in the next couple of scenes before we get to the finale. All right, so that was a kind of a synopsis, but the struggle I had writing series 3. That's why it's 4 months late. Well, 3.5, because Matt Clarke always started in January. This one's starting April 1st. I literally could have started it Friday. Well, no, Friday is when we did. No, Friday's when Joyce did her first voices. So yeah, I had scene 1 done early last week, over a week ago. So I could have started it and been 3 months late. But that leads to the final thing I was going to talk about here, which is I have loved writing Matt Clarke, and it is special to me. And I wish more people would catch it. To be honest, this is the one thing on all my channel I wish would catch on and go viral. You know, our parody songs, it's cool. It would be cool if a couple of them would go viral. Actually, we did get 1,300 views on one, and almost 1,000 on another, and there's a couple others that are 600 views, but that's not viral. We'd really love it if Matt Clarke somehow got linked to somebody, or somebody liked it, said, oh my god, this is great, could we work with you and do this, you know, and kind of really, that comedian in me that never got a chance to try a full career as a stand-up comedian says, hey, it's never too late. But I love Matt Clarke, but the struggles of writing just kind of towards the end of series 2 and series 3 is why I don't want to try to force myself to do another series, especially a dated series where I have to get this in on January. And I know nobody put that pressure on but me. There's no network demanding it. Nobody asked me to create Matt Clarke. I created it as a lark during a live stream, and then it turned into a personal monster. But when I announced that season 3 is ready to go, even if it's not 100% ready to go, because I haven't written the last 3 or 4 scenes yet. I've got the basic scripts down. I just got to fill in the jokes and exactly how everybody talks and how it's going to play out. But I mean, in how it's going to play out, I've got. But I announced this is the last Matt Clarke series. Now, it doesn't mean I'm done with Matt Clarke. It just means it's the last one where there's a spring release date. I could come back from Germany and have a new Matt Clarke episode or series ready to go. But I really think Matt Clarke now, if I do it, is going to be random special one-offs. You know, a 20-minute episode or joke, just a small, brief joke. But if I do a series again, I don't know that I'd ever try to do another 18 to 23 episode series. That was a lot to write myself. And all the voices to create and to try to do all the voices. This is a one-man show, with the exception that Joyce does play sounding board for me and does some of the most of the women voices, and does help me in so many ways. But producing the visuals, that's all me. Writing the script is all me writing it, although I will ask Joyce for advice, or which of these 2 do you like, and so forth. But it's always me, and then Joyce just does feedback for me, and sometimes my other family members. But I'm just, I love Matt Clarke too much to keep trying to force it, and most TV shows do that, where it just starts to feel forced after a 3rd season, unless you're constantly changing things. And that's the one thing with Matt Clarke. I don't want to do drastic changes. I love these characters. And I do have ideas. Like, I would love to do a Matt Clarke in Europe, just to and I've actually got some general ideas. The problem is, how do you explain getting all the Matt Clarke characters to Europe? Because that's the thing about Matt Clarke. I always use his name, but Matt Clarke, the show, is not just Matt Clarke. If you think about your favorite characters, who are your favorite characters? Those of you that like Matt Clarke, for example, Joyce, one of her favorite characters is Four Finger Bill, a villain, a killer who has killed. She just likes Four Finger Bill. And when we did series one, it was funny because we did it as part of a premiere and then a live stream after it. And when Four Finger Bill blows away Bobby the Kid and rides off, escaping, several people in the chat cheered. Joyce already knew he was going to escape, and she was happy because when I talked about they all got to die, she's like, even Four Finger Bill. I said, yeah, they're all the villains die. And she's like, no. And then I thought, because originally I was going to think somebody, well, Daisy's going to survive. But my original thought was to kill off Four Finger Bill. And then I gave Joyce the two options, and she chose the one that says keep him because plus it suggested another season for him to come back as the one villain that might have a grudge. Okay. Well, he doesn't come back for series 2, but he comes back for series 3, obviously. But with series 3, it was so hard to get started, or maybe it wasn't. I had seen one written, but so many things were going on, and I was pressuring myself so much because I got to get this in January, and that just made it worse. And then January came and went, and I was just more upset. So I'm not saying Matt Clarke is done. I'm just saying as a scheduled series, he's done. From now on, it might be 6 months and there'll be a new Matt Clarke series, or it might be 3 years and then all of a sudden a return to Big Gulch may show up. I don't even plan at this stage of writing a Christmas special. But again, Christmas time could come around and I'll change. So I don't want to be held to, hey, you promised no more. But I also not going to promise it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But from this point on, Matt Clarke will only happen as really good vibes that I think would do justice to what I've created. And again, there's not a lot of people who give a damn about Matt Clarke, but I give a damn about it, and that is why I keep producing it, even if it doesn't get a lot of views, because it is that special to me, and I do love these characters, and I love every single character I've created. And I will, spoiler alert, none of the, none of the main characters disappear. In my little fictional world, the good guys always win. And if you didn't figure that out by now, then, because some people I want the good guys to have a darkness, or the good guys have to suffer something. Well, they do suffer injuries, but this is purity and it's comedy, and I like the good guys wearing the white hats and riding off, and the bad guys getting punished in the end. But there are some things that are going to happen in here that are a little more intense but they all come out all right. But we are definitely ending the series with kind of a finality that says there is no Easter egg, there is no hidden hint at the next series. There is nothing in series 3 that you could say, that's where they're going to pull out and do series 4. That's why there's a debate on one character. And some of you could probably already guess which one it is, as to kill or don't kill, because if I let them live, there's that character. But then on the other hand, I've gone as far as I can with that character, and it might be time just to end them. But, the jokes have been done, and as much as we do, Series 3 does honor Series 1, and it honors Series 2. But since I've been writing it, it's been fun. And the first 3 episodes that we've done with the voices, and I cannot wait for you all to see Scene 3. Because either Joyce and I are off our rockers, but Scene 3 is one where even after we started producing it, Joyce came back and said, well, maybe we should change that one bit in there because that might offend a few people. And we were like, nope, it's pure Matt Clarke world, and I like it better than the other option we had. Both options are funny, but this one was funnier. And and I'm gonna make it sound like it's something drastic and horrible, but that's just it. It isn't that drastic or horrible, but the fear of offending somebody gets to it a point, and some of you are going to remember this and watch scene 3 of series 3 ago. What was so offensive? And it's like, well, that's just it. I didn't think it was that offensive, but Joyce was worried. But we have not stopped laughing about it. We have watched it now that I've produced it 4 times, and we're still laughing. And again, it may not hit you guys as funny as it hit us. So, yeah, Matt Clarke has been something special for a long time, and I am eager to keep the memory of Matt Clarke alive and keep it going. But from now on, it's just going to be when it happens and not every January, every uh, early spring will be Matt Clarke. From now on, it's just going to be random and whenever I get a vibe. And I'm not going to announce anything until I've got a full script and episode 1 of whatever that series is. But now I really see it being, at least right now, I feel they would be shorter because it's just been very hard the last few months to write with everything that has gone on in our world. And that was part of it was a triple wall of all the negativity that has happened in our lives with the friends dying, the relatives dying, other relatives getting severely sick, friends on YouTube getting sick, some passing away. Andy from Somerset, Andy, Chris Whittingham, Richard from Layton Junction, all these guys, just so many people, both that we know or grew to care about online as well as in our real life. There was just so much. It was overwhelming, and it that was one issue. It was hard to get into a funny, happy, crazy, zany place because you're constantly thinking about, hey, so and so is dying, so and so just died, and people can say, oh, go, you got to live your life. You can't let it bring you down. Yeah, you can't let it bring it down until it's something that happens to you and brings you down. And then maybe you understand why other people don't bounce back real fast. But we had just so much stuff. And then the pressure I started putting on myself to get Matt Clarke done just really created a massive writer's block. So now I don't ever want to work under that. I've got to get it done. From now on, it's just, and again, you didn't do it. I did it to myself. And so I am hoping you guys that like Matt Clarke will enjoy Series 3. Those of you that don't know Matt Clarke, I'm begging you, yes, it would be about 4 or 5 hours viewing time. I think, well, no, Matt Clarke Series 1, 18 episodes, is like 2.5 hours of video, although there's a movie that cuts it down shorter. Series 2 is even longer and can have some long narrative sections in it, but still it's good. The Christmas special helps set up Series 2. And so if you want to get a feeling for what Matt Clarke is, especially as we head into Series 3, seriously, you cannot understand Episode 1 of Series 3 or Episode 2 or Episode 3 without understanding the full story. So you got to go back, and I know that's asking a lot for people, but I would like people to do it because the worst it's going to do is make you smile, and if it doesn't make you smile in the first couple episodes, then it's not going to make you smile, and therefore you don't need to go back and you don't need to bother watching Series 3. But the characters have grown, changed, evolved, and yet they've stayed true to themselves and who they are. And Matt and Madame Lot and Silas Sumbish and Daisy Cockett, Lil McGill, Sheriff Buck M. Dannon, Diesel Dan, and Smokey, the main group. That's the main group. There's so many side characters, but that's the main group. The running gags. We're gonna have Bell Buster. That started in series 2 when they took over the Filthy Glass Saloon. But Bell Buster, whom Silas calls Ball Buster, um, and we're gonna try to give a little quick call out to all the minor characters from series 1, series 2, and the 2 Christmas specials. Not all of them, but as many as we can, and make sure everybody gets their 5 seconds of screen time to say hello again and maybe even say goodbye. But we're very thrilled with what we've got done so far. It's I've been reading more scenes to Joyce because in recording the voices, this is the first time where she has not read the script. She usually either has me read it to her, or she reads it with me, so that she can make her comments or her suggestions, or if I have a choice, like I could do this or do this, which one do you think's funnier? So when we came down to do voices for scene 3, we just did the voices. She didn't know the plot. She knew the basic plot line, but she didn't know the conversations. And just because this is already an hour-long video, if you don't know, when we record a scene, we just record each character's voices. We don't act out the scene. For example, if a scene has Matt Clarke, I will record all Matt Clarke's lines on one file. And then I'll record all the sheriff's lines, and then all Madame Lott's lines. And Joyce will come down and do Daisy or Lil and her characters. And then I go into my movie editor and take the lines and splice them in order. That's how we do it. And Joyce usually has an idea. She knows the plot, so she knows the lines. Well, she has not been able to read the script with me or had enough time for me to read some of the rewrites and rewrites. So when she came down to do the voices for scene 3, because that's the first time I needed her, she had not heard scene 1 or scene 2. Although when she did scene 3, she had already seen scene 1. I had already made it and posted it on YouTube. But she read some of her lines and started laughing at some of them because she hadn't seen them before, and I had to tell her, you're reacting to this, so you got to do that. But then once she did all the lines, I put it together with some editing, and I rewrote a couple lines and rearranged some lines. So even when she did a couple lines and thought they were here, I actually moved them somewhere else because I thought, this actually works better and is funnier if it happens here. So she just watched episode 3 last night before I put it online, and she busted out laughing, and that really made me feel good because she was really laughing. And I even watched it a second time and then a third time, and I was in bed late last night watching it just before going to sleep, and she watched a bit of it and she was still giggling at the bigger jokes in it, which really made me feel good because in the end, Matt Clarke is to make me laugh, and if it makes Joyce laugh, and then if it makes some of you laugh, all the better. So this is almost exactly an hour, a little bit more than an hour, so I'm going to cut it here and hope you all tune in for Matt Clarke Series 3, but I'm asking you, if you've never watched Series 1 or Series 2 or the whole thing, please go back and watch it. But Matt Clarke Series 3 starts April 1st. It begins at 3 a.m. It goes live 3 a.m. my time, April 1st. So that it's midnight on the west coast of the United States. It's 8 a.m. in the UK, 9 a.m. in Western Europe. So start your Saturday off with 10 minutes of laughter and some silliness. Although, again, scene 1 is always kind of just establishing, but we still try to throw as much humor in as we can, but it is sort of plot establishment. But for those of you that have wondered where Four Finger Bill is, he's back in scene 1. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and we'll see you when it begins. So until then, auf Wiedersehen, tschüss, and happy trains. Goodbye, everybody.